If you haven't watched Beau's previous videos about anatomy of buyers and listing process, it's available now. Watch now.
Hey everyone, today we're going to talk about the sales contract and the sales process. This process is going to be distinctly different than what we've talked about in our previous videos in the listing process, right? So this is after we have a fully executed contract, we've sent all the documents to escrow, and we've opened up that escrow with that escrow company. The first process we're going to do is what's called the due diligence period. This is the time for the buyer to get their home inspections done, any other inspection that you have negotiated with them through the listing process, and allows them 7, 10, 15 days generally speaking, but it can be any duration depending on what you negotiate with the buyer for them to get these inspections done. But also it's at that same time period is what they have to negotiate with you if they do find things that they don't find acceptable with the house. By the end of the due diligence period, everyone in the transaction should know what is or is not going to get fixed, if there's a credit involved, or if they're buying the property as is. So during that process, we want to make sure that all of the utilities are on. That's gas, power, water, electricity, because if they get a home inspector to come in and they can't do their inspections, it's going to delay that due diligence period. We're going to have to extend it because we weren't prepared for them to do their inspections and for them to get a timely inspection. One little hiccup that I see from time to time is if you put a small little padlock on your electrical panel, we want to make sure that's off, because the home inspectors do look at those panels. They do make sure that they're labeled and they're in good working order. So that's just a little hiccup that we see from time to time. So after that inspection, like I said, there's what's called the request for repairs. If your house is pristine and the buyer is just super anxious and wants to get the due diligence period done, they might send you a blank request for repairs and say, you know what, we love the house, don't want any repairs, we are ready to move on to the next step. More than likely, every house has faults, brand new, older. It's these home inspectors' jobs to find issues, what they get paid for, what they do. So they're going to be anything from major to minor that might be asked for on the request for repairs. This is a negotiation period. We can either say, yes, we're going to fix everything that you sent us on your list. Hey, we will fix item 3, 5, and 8, and then nothing else we're going to touch. Some people go, I will give you an X amount of money as a credit in lieu of making these repairs, so you can have your handyman, your contractor come in and fix it to your standards. So I'm not held responsible if something does happen while we're trying to fix these issues. So negotiate that with the buyer and use your real estate agent as a resource to kind of figure out what's norms and how to best handle these situations. Just remember, this is all negotiations, and this should all be done during that due diligence period. Great, due diligence period's over. I am safe to sell the house, no problems coming up. No, we still have a couple other steps we need to get through. The first one being if you live in an HOA. In Nevada, it is required that you give the new buyer the HOA documents, the resale package. These packages can take 7, 10 days to get from the HOA. There's 2 or 3 services that we use to order them through. You can pay for expedited service if that's something that you're running up against, be it a short escrow, someone forgets to order them, that'd probably be your real estate agents. And we just need to get them going a little bit quicker, because even if you're outside of your due diligence period and that check box has been done, they can still cancel the transaction after they receive the HOA documents. Why? Because in Nevada, they have 5 days to review those documents. And if they find anything in those documents, they can cancel escrow. They don't have to negotiate with you. They don't have to negotiate with the HOA. If they see something that, they want to paint the house pink and it said they can't do that, the escrow is canceled, they get their earnest money back, and now you're back on the market. So we want to make sure we get those HOA documents in a timely manner so we can get that checkbox done and move on. Generally speaking, unless you have a cash offer, you're going to have some sort of appraisal contingency. These contingencies tend to be longer than the due diligence period because we're waiting on an appraiser, and appraisers, quite frankly, there's not that many of them, and they're busy. So it takes them a week or so to get out to even inspect the property, and then once they inspect the property, they have to go in and they have to do their desktop review and comparable analysis and market analysis, and then get that to the lender. So that, generally speaking, is between 18 and 21 days for that contingency. A couple things when it comes time for the appraisal. One, in most cases, they're going to have to do an inspection of the property. So it's either coordinated through you or your agent to let that appraiser in. I would say make sure the house is listing ready, just like you had it prepared when you were showing it. We wanted to put the house in the best light so we can get the best values, make sure that we don't have a low appraisal situation that we're going to have to negotiate later with the buyer. There are generally two options when we get the appraisal back. We'll get the thumbs up from the other side or the lender saying, hey, appraisal came in at value, we're good to go, let's remove that contingency. The other issue we might have, which is definitely not what we want to have in most situations, is a low value. So what happens there? So they're going to say, let's just use some round numbers. You guys went into contract for $400,000, appraisal came back at $390. $10,000 gap, how are we going to handle that? Well, either the seller can say, you know what, that's what an independent appraiser said my house is worth. I will reduce the purchase price to $390. Okay, that's great on the seller to get the transaction done, and they obviously want to move on to their next phase of their life. Secondly, the buyer they love the house, they know that it's a hot market like we were about a year ago. They're gonna take $10,000 out of their savings and say, hey, we're gonna cover the cost of difference of that appraisal to get this thing done. And then obviously the third, there's a 50-50. You know, the buyer comes down or comes up 5,000, the seller comes down 5,000, everyone meets in the middle to get this transaction done so everyone can move on to the next phase of their life. So appraisal's done, came in at value, we're excited. There's one more contingency. Usually it's a loan contingency. It's more of a formality. It's usually 3 to 4 days after the appraisal contingency allows the appraisal to come in, the lender to look at it, make sure there's no other issues, and we clear that contingency. So those are the major contingencies that we see in the residential real estate: due diligence, HOA, appraisal, and then loan contingency. So we got through all of our contingencies. What do we do next? Well, it's time to start packing, of course. And we want to make sure that we are prepared when it's time for that close of escrow, that we are out of that house. Unless you've negotiated a post-possession agreement with the buyer, you have to be out of the house by the time that unit closes, even a couple days before, so that the final walkthrough goes through seamlessly. Now we're on the final walkthrough. Generally speaking, that happens about 1 to 2 days before the close of escrow. That's when the buyer will come with their agent, do one more look at the property, make sure that while you were moving out or in the last time that someone was inside the property, you didn't put holes in the wall, there wasn't a random leak, the chandelier that you guys agreed to stay is still there. Generally speaking, these are pretty nominal. They go pretty quick and nothing really happens, but there can be hiccups before the close of escrow if something major happens. So let's try to avoid that. If you have any questions, reach out to your real estate agent and they can definitely understand what is supposed to stay and what's not supposed to stay. A clear close and no issues to be had. Last minute items. So you're leaving the house for the last time. You want to make sure that you don't have to come back. You're not rushing through something you packed. These are some items that I want to make sure that you leave in the house. Keys. Any extra keys you have for the house, any keys that you have for the mailbox, a community pool, a side gate, that electrical panel, garage remotes, gate remotes for an HOA. Let's put those all in either a drawer or a nice package and let everyone know where those are, so when that new owner comes in, they can take that package out and start enjoying their house. Codes, if you have any sort of codes for your house, garage codes, alarm codes, you know, with the smart technology, if there's any codes for the doorbell, let's make sure we leave those for the buyer so that they can enjoy all those items that they purchased right away without having to reset and call manufacturers and really delay the process. Utilities, you're going to want to schedule utilities to be turned off. Generally speaking, I say it should be the day after close of escrow. It gives that buffer period for the buyer to get the utilities changed in their name, and you'd get them changed out of your name. So if you close on, let's say, June 15th, let's give them a day at 16th or 17th. It's not going to cost you but a couple bucks to be a suitable host for your new buyers. And then cleaning. There's nothing in the agreement that says you have to do a deep clean of the house. What is generally known as the term broom swept. You know, you don't want to leave garbage, don't want to leave big messes, and the floor should not be, you know, full of a lot of dust and dog hair and what. Obviously, if you want to have the house cleaned, I'm sure the buyer would much appreciate it, but broom swept is the normal term for how a house should be left. All right, so close of escrow and signing. Obviously, as a seller, there's a lot less paperwork for you to sign. You still have to go into escrow. Usually this happens a day or two before the close of escrow date. You can sign a little bit ahead of time because you're not waiting on loan docs. You can just get those documents out of the way if you're traveling out of state for your new move or you're just busy. So you can schedule that with your real estate agent and escrow just to get one thing off your plate and get that signing done. A couple items that people forget to bring when they're at their signing is a photo ID. This is a notary item. You're gonna need your photo ID so you can sign the documents through a notary, and you don't want to delay that process. Secondly, wiring instructions. Where are those funds from the sale going? Are they just going to your bank account? Are they going to another escrow company because you're doing a contingent upon sale? Or is it going to an investment account? Bring those wiring instructions to the close of escrow so there's no delay in getting your funds. Finally, closing. This process is pretty simple, does not involve much on your part. Escrow, once they have received all signatures, all funds, and they verify everything, they'll let us know they're going out to close. What does that mean? They send the package to the Clark County Recorder's Office, and it just gets there in a pile or a list. Who first come, first serve, you might say. And sometimes they're pretty quick, sometimes they're a little slower, especially at the end of the month. So, generally speaking, anywhere between noon and 5 o'clock, we'll get the final word that your house is closed. Congratulations, and it's time to celebrate the closing. You can move on to the next chapter of your life. You can buy that another house. You can travel. Whatever you're doing with the funds, congratulations. Now, when do you tend to get those funds? The next business day. Because once they get that recording certificate, they're going to do one more final check, and they're going to disperse generally the next business day via wire, via check, however you decide to do it. So this video is on the sales process. Of course, we have a video on the listing process and even the buyer's process. If you have any questions about any aspects of real estate, I'm here to help. Thank you for watching my video. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and share.